The following is a video tutorial for how to take your train assembly and then assemble it and constrain it to the track, and in doing so also create an animation using Inventor Studio. So real quick, I'd just like to take a look at the video that you have to make. This is one of the videos that I'm requiring every one of my students to make. This is going to be the train assembly, basically riding down the straight track. And I made this video using Inventor Studio. So you can see here when I hit play, very nice animation. There's some lighting changes I can make in Inventor Studio to give it a better quality, but that's what we're looking for with that. Also, I'll see here some of the documentation that I'm going to need to put on for my drawing sheets. Basically, what I find here is that I'm going to have to create one assembly file to do these views here. I will then take that assembly file and do a save as, and create a separate second assembly file and bring in a track piece. I will show you how to do that, and we're only going to bring in one track piece and then leave that file as is, because that's how we're going to get this nice isometric view of the train actually on the track. And then we'll have to do a third save as and create a third assembly file from our original and just add in the other track pieces so that we can get 1, 2, 3, 4 track pieces in a row here. That gives us enough space to kind of put this animation to life. So that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to need 3 separate assembly files once we're all said and done. So I'm going to jump over to my Inventor right quick, and this is actually my assembly that I've put together already. Notice here that it is assembled and constrained the way that it should be. When I pull on my linkage arm here, the wheels move, and also the wheels and the linkage arm on the other side move opposite to that. So that's what we're looking for. If your train does not animate in this way, you need to go ahead and take a step back and go and look at the original assembly video for how to put the train part together and revisit some of those things so that it can get to this space here. So once you have your assembly file completed, you have all the constraints and the necessary ways, what I'm going to do here is create a save as, and I'm just going to leave it as assembly practice and say with one track piece. I've actually already created one of those earlier, so I just changed the name a little bit so it won't overwrite that original file, and I'll say save. At this point here, we've basically just created a copy of the original file that we had created, and now at this point I'm going to bring in one of my straight track pieces. I'm bringing the updated version for 2012-2013. Some of those numbers had changed. I'm just going to go ahead and lay it down right there. So in this file currently, my train body is still the grounded piece. Note that I cannot move it around. The track can move. We're basically going to assemble the train to the track and then switch which part is grounded. We're going to end up grounding the track once it's all said and done. But I want to constrain it first because some weird things can happen if we change this now and then begin to constrain it. You might end up with an isometric view that looks something like this, and that's just not going to be pretty or easy to work with in the future. So you want to make sure that your isometric always stays nice and square like how you see here. So there's going to be 4 constraints in total that we're going to add to get this train on the track and then animating in the correct way. The first constraint that I'm going to select here is going to be a mate with an offset from this flat surface of the track here to the bottom flat surface on the train. So I'm going to select those 2 surfaces. You can see the track had moved over to meet that bottom of the train there, and the offset that I'm going to do, and there's an easy way to see where your parts are coming in, is I'm just going to go ahead and offset this a little bit, say like 0.6, and see where it is. Now that's a little bit above where I need it to be, so I can continue to whittle away at this number, and I do happen to know that I'm looking for 0.435, and that'll line up the curvature of the wheel here pretty much right on top of the track that we're looking at. So I'm going to say apply and cancel out here for a second, hit home on my view cube there. Okay, so the next constraint This will be another mate constraint with an additional offset. What I'm looking for on this one is I'm going to select the flat surface of the wheel. Make sure you're not selecting any of the curves on the inside or the outside here. We're actually looking for this flat surface. You should see these two red circles going around the part. That's a flat surface there. We're going to select that. And then I'm going to select the inside flat surface of my track rail here. You notice it has now rotated the track to meet that. And again, I'm going to look down the barrel here, straight down the track, and change the offset until that train looks like it's pretty much right in the middle. I believe 0.05 is a pretty good number here for getting us squared up. I will then say apply and cancel. So now we basically have what we're looking for here, except the track can move back and forth. The last constraint that I'm going to put on for right now is going to be a flush constraint, and I'm going to want to flush the back flat surface on the train here to this flat surface on the back end of the train here, and say apply. Now, that last constraint that I just added on, that's going to be the constraint that we're actually going to drive to send this train down the track in our animation here in the future. So to go and look at that flush constraint, what I'm going to do is open up the hierarchy underneath the straight track piece, and you see those three constraints that I've put in so far: the mate, the other mate from the wheel to the inside of the track, and this flush. I'm going to right click on this flush here and say edit, and then if I hit this double arrow here, what it gives me is an opportunity to rename that constraint so that I can remind myself in the future that, hey, this is the one that's going to actually drive the train down the track. So by renaming it, it actually gets rid of the flush portion here. So I'm just going to retype in flush colon space and then put in drive constraint. Alright, and so that's going to be my helper here in the future. Once I say OK, you can see that it added drive constraint to the end of the name there. And then actually, if we go ahead and right click on that, I can say drive constraint. You can see if I zoom out here a little bit and if I hit play, but I guarantee you what's going to happen here is, since we have the train body still grounded and the track piece is not, when I hit play here, the track is going to go slipping out from underneath. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to make that switch right now. Is I'm going to right click on train body and deselect grounded. I will then click on the straight track piece, right click there and select grounded. So now that I've switched these here, if I go back to this drive constraint and hit play, hopefully the train moves, and it does. So that's good, perfect. One of the last constraints that I'm going to need to do here is actually animate these wheels so they move along with this drive constraint when I hit play here to send the train forward. So if I hit the little double arrow here, I can actually slow this down. I'm going to change it to 0.1 just so you can see that these wheels, they kind of move, but they really don't make it all the way around like they're supposed to be doing. Kind of just going about halfway. They stay at the bottom. They're basically kind of stuck where they are. So the fourth and final constraint that you need to put in here to make this animate correctly is going to be a motion constraint. And it's going to be this second type here, which is a rotation translation. The first selection that I'm going to pick is going to be this right here. You should see these two red lines popping up on both sides of the inside and outside of the wheel, as well as the red center line going through the middle of the part here. So you want to select that first, and then on the track here you can select what am I looking at? The inside edge of this track line or the outside edge. I'm going to select this inside edge here, and we're looking for this arrow that's going to pop up at the back end of the track piece. So if I select this edge here, I know that I have to change this distance to 6.28. That's going to be a number that we all have to enter in. I'm going to say apply. I will then close this window. And now after applying that constraint, if I come back in here and drive and hit play, you should see that the wheels animate just the way that we had constrained them to in the original assembly. So now that we have everything assembled correctly, it's animating correctly, I'm going to basically offset the flush constraint that I'd put from the back end of the track to the back end of the train to kind of get this guy in the middle, and then I'm going to just go ahead and say save, and then this will be the view that I bring in for here with the train on one track, and then I'll create my third assembly file from this one. So again, I'm going to go to this flush constraint here, but if you select it once, you'll see a number pops up in the bottom. I can actually just type in, I believe the track is 12 inches long, so let's see how 5.5 looks. Hit enter there. Actually went too far because I have to offset for the train itself. So let's try about 3 inches. I'm going to go 3.5. That looks to be good right there. This is how I'm going to save this file. So I'll hit save right now. And when I'm doing my drawing sheets then, I'll bring in an isometric view of this file, and I should be able to place this view here. So next, now that I have that all set, I'm going to do an additional save as. I'll change this file name here to say assembly practice with all, or I'll just change it to 4 track pieces. And this will be the file that we're going to use to create that actual animation in Inventor Studio. So I'll hit save. It has now created another copy of this file here. At this point, I'm just going to go ahead and reset my flush from 3.5 back to 0, get it in the starting position that I want it to be in. Now I'm going to bring in 3 more track pieces. So I'll go to my straight track and place 1, 2, 3 of those in here, and now I'll just constrain these track pieces to this grounded track piece that we have here. So constrain, I'm looking for center lines on that part there to this one here. I will say apply. I will then also flush the tops of the tracks together to get them on the same plane, and then the sides of the tracks I will flush those as well to get them going in the same direction. So it's just 3 constraints there. I do a mate of these center lines, say apply, and then flush the top to the top and flush the side to the side. Apply, and the last piece here is going to be a mate, center to center, apply, flush to flush, apply, and then these again, apply. And I can cancel out. Now I have my 4 track pieces lined up in a row. I know that my drive constraint here, if I bring that back up, you can see that its starting position is at 0 and its end position is at 10 inches. Well, each one of these track pieces is around 12 inches, and so if I go ahead and play this at its current state, it's only going to make it to about right there. So what I can do is I'm going to send it back to where it began, and I'll just increase this end to around 40 inches. Now when I hit play, it should make it all the way down the track. Perfect. Now I could do a recording right here and just animate this back and forth using the play buttons and the step features here, but it doesn't really give us a nice quality. It does if you tweak some of the different features here for creating it. Of course, you know, we can do an AVI and you can change the compression factor and all that, but what I've found is that in Inventor Studio you get a much more quality rendering out of it. So that's what we're going to do next. What we want to do is we're going to switch to the Tools tab at the top here, and you see Inventor Studio. It's a little teapot looking thing, little icon here. I'm going to go ahead and select on Inventor Studio, and it brings up a new tab all the way at the end here called Render. Alright, and if I bring up my animation timeline, it says that animation commands are not active in the model state. You must activate an animation to use animation commands. So first things first then is I have to add one of these constraints to make this animation possible. So to do that, I'm going to open up my hierarchy here so that I can select that drive constraint from earlier. That's our driving factor. That's going to be our driving constraint. So next I'm going to select constraints. It asks me to select which constraint I'd like to do, so you have to make sure that both of these icons here are selected in blue. I can then come to my list here and select this flush drive constraint. You can see now that it has a start and an end point of 0. I'm just going to make that end point 40 to match what it said in our other view. And then the time portion down here, basically whatever number I enter in here at the end is how long it's going to take the train to get from 0 to 40 inches in that certain allotted time. So I'm going to make it, let's put in 7 seconds for now and see how that looks. I'll say OK. And you can see that it added about 7 seconds to my animation timeline, and it moved the train forward. So if I just hit go to start and then hit play here, I can kind of just visually, check to make sure I'm okay with the timing on that. And if everything looks to be in order, then you should be okay. Now notice, where the heck is this thing going? It's just going to keep on going because it's got all of this timeline open. So we actually need to shorten that to get it to only be the 7 seconds that we need. So in order to do that, and the next thing that we have to go to is going to be this icon here for render animation. I will open that window here. And there's a whole bunch of different things that we can tweak. Before we forget though, I'm just going to start at the back here and work my way forward. Under style, nothing really going on here. You can either have a reflection in the geometry to some sort of shiny surface if you have one. Just going to leave that the way it is. But the output here, you see the time range goes from 0 to 30, which is the full amount on the timeline. I'm just going to shorten that to be 7. Or maybe that, actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to make it 8 seconds. That way, at the end of 7, when this thing gets to the end of the track here, it'll give me a second to actually just see the train at the end. The video that I have up on YouTube, I think actually cuts off right away as soon as it makes it to the end. So in this time around, I'm actually going to give it one extra second just to kind of give it a better feel. For anti-aliasing, we're going to want to select this fourth option here for highest. This will kind of just get rid of some of the digitation that you'll see on the edges. Everything else seems to be in good order here. I will then switch to the general tab, and here we can see there's a couple different there's some options here for different lighting styles. You can pick whatever one works best for you. Kind of just give you a different few looks here. 4-color, outdoors, really bright, shop lighting. You can set where these lights are actually coming from. I'm not going to tweak with any of those settings today. Just going to find one that I'm okay with here. Maybe for this one I'll do, as a matter of fact, I believe I shot my original video with shop lighting, so I'm going to go with that one again. You can change the background here, but I would suggest changing it in the application options like I've shown you how to change your backgrounds before. I'm leaving mine this nice green color in the back just because it's a nice offset from all the gray. So I'm going to leave that the way it is, but you could change it here as well. And then for render type, illustration or shaded, leave it as shaded. And at this point you would just hit render. Now it brings up this file type manager here. You're going to want to save as type to an AVI like always. Name it what you want to name it. For this will be, train assembly, riding along track. If I can spell. I will then say save. And that'll bring up this final window here for video compression. I'd like for you to set it to Microsoft Video 1. Compression quality, take it from 75 all the way up to 100. And then the last thing here is go to configure and just take that all the way up to 1.00. At this point you say OK, and it begins to render your video. Now it's going to go through frame by frame, and depending on what kind of settings you would put to it, it might take a certain amount of time. So I'm going to let Inventor do its work here. I'm going to pause the video tutorial for now, and then I'll come back as soon as the rendering has finished. So with the help of some video editing, you can see here I've jumped ahead to frame 120 and now 121 out of 121. My rendering has now completed. At this point, I see a save icon here, and you notice if I hover over that, it says save rendered image. So all this is going to do is give us the opportunity to save the image that we're currently looking at. I'm not going to need that for any reason or any way. This file has already actually been saved as it was recording and rendering. It was sending all that information to that video file, so you should be in good shape at this point. We can go ahead and just exit out here. For the render animation window here, I can close that as well. I will then say finish Inventor Studio, and then I'm just going to save this file one last time. Make sure you save everything. So at this point, if you followed these steps accordingly, you should have your original assembly file, which you will place on your drawing sheets here in a multi-view. You will then have that second assembly file, which we created with the train and the one track piece offset a little bit from the back to kind of give it a nice look, right in the middle of the track here. And then you should also have that third assembly file with that video that you can then take, and you can either put it on your YouTube channel or you can put it on your Google Docs video stuff, and then at that point you'll just upload that to your online portfolio. And I'll open up my portfolio here and take a look at that. For my miniature model train, if I scroll down to the bottom here, you'll see I have my two videos, but the one video that I just created, I put it on YouTube and I linked it here to my online portfolio. So hopefully if you follow these steps correctly, you should be in good shape. Please feel free to comment or like, and have a nice day.